Hello and welcome. So, you're thinking about raising a child with two or more languages? That's amazing. And I want you to know you're not signing up for some impossible, difficult quest. Not at all. You're actually starting what is a completely natural and common human experience. This isn't about a challenge to overcome, it's an adventure, a really joyful one that opens up a whole world of culture, family, and connection. Okay, let's just kick things off with a number that might totally blow your mind. More than half of the world's population is bilingual. Let that sink in for a second. Being bilingual isn't the exception to the rule. On a global scale, it's actually the norm. So yeah, what you're doing is the most natural thing in the world. Let's get into how this incredible journey works. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll talk about what this adventure is really all about. Then, we're going to get a little nerdy and dive into the fascinating science of the bilingual brain. After that, we'll cover the single most important ingredient for success. We'll answer your biggest, most common questions, and finally, we'll get practical and talk about creating a language plan that works for your family. And it really is an adventure, because you're giving your child so much more than just a second language. You're handing them a key that unlocks deeper connections with their family, a passport to explore new cultures, and a way to see our interconnected world with so much more depth and understanding. So, how in the world does this all work inside a little kid's brain? Let's get into the science. For a long, long time, people had all these myths that bilingualism would cause confusion or speech delays. Well, modern research has completely flipped that idea on its head. We now know that a bilingual brain isn't confused at all. It's actually this unique, super sophisticated, and totally integrated system. And this quote right here from the brilliant researcher François Grosjean is the most important idea to grasp. A bilingual person isn't two separate monolingual people squished into one head. It doesn't work like that. They have one single, unique, and amazing language system. And this slide just shows that shift perfectly. The old view was like having two separate walled-off brains for language. But we know now it's one integrated system. Think of a master chef who's an expert in both French and Italian cooking. They don't have a separate French cooking brain and Italian cooking brain. It's one culinary mind, and they pull from everything they know to create something amazing. That's the bilingual brain. So you might be asking, okay, if it's one system, how does it keep the languages straight? Well, it's through something called the complementarity principle. And all that fancy term means is that it's completely normal for a child to use their different languages for different parts of their life. It's not a weakness, it's actually a sign of a super efficient brain using the right tool for the right job. And here's what that looks like in real life. Maybe your child uses Spanish to talk about food and tell stories with grandma, but they switch right over to English for their math homework. Or maybe German is the special language they have with mom, and English is what they speak with dad. They might even have what some people call a language of the heart for their feelings, and another language for school stuff. That's the principle in action. Okay, now for what is maybe the most critical piece of this entire puzzle, language input. Put simply, it all comes down to the language your child actually hears every single day. Getting this right is the absolute cornerstone of their bilingual development. And input really breaks down into two key parts. First, there's quantity. This one's pretty straightforward. The more a child is exposed to a language, the more skilled they'll get. It's that simple. But just as important, if not more so, is quality. This is all about the way you interact with them, and it has a massive positive impact. So, what is quality input, really? Let me tell you what it's not. It's not flashcards. It's not formal lessons or drills. It's the fun stuff. It's those natural back-and-forth conversations you have, even when they're just a baby cooing back at you. It's snuggling up to read a book together, pointing at the pictures. It's all about connection and engagement. Quality input is, at its heart, just joyful interaction. And this brings us to that part of the journey where, let's be honest, the doubts can start to creep in. So let's just tackle the top questions and worries that parents have, and we'll arm ourselves with what the research actually tells us. Ah, yes, the big one. You're speaking one language, your child replies with a sentence that's a mix of two, and that little panic button goes off in your head. Oh no, they're confused, I've broken their brain. But are they really? No, not at all. What you're actually witnessing is an incredibly sophisticated skill called code switching. It is not a sign of confusion. It is a sign that both languages are alive and active in their brain. They are brilliantly pulling from their entire linguistic toolkit to get their point across in the most efficient way possible. It's a feature, not a bug. So next time you hear the mix, you can secretly feel proud of their brain's amazing flexibility. Okay, here's another worry that keeps parents up at night: vocabulary. You might be at the playground and you hear a monolingual kid using a certain word and you think, my child doesn't know that word in English, and you start to second guess everything. But we have to look at the full picture. If you look at the vocabulary in just one of their languages, yeah, the number might be a little smaller than a monolingual kid's. But that's only half the story. When you look at their total vocabulary, all the unique words they know across both languages combined, they are right on par. Their vocabulary isn't smaller, it's just distributed across two languages. Okay, this one can be so frustrating. You are so consistent, you speak your family language all the time, and your child just keeps answering you in the majority language, like English. It can really start to feel like they're rejecting your language or rejecting a part of you. But they're not, I promise. They're just being efficient. Their brain is taking the path of least resistance. So instead of making it a battle, try a gentle, playful prompt. If you ask something in German and they answer in English, just smile and say, "That's right. And how does mama say it?" You're validating their answer while softly encouraging them to dip back into the other language, all without any pressure. And finally, let's talk about the game plan. Because while there's no single magic formula that works for everyone, having a consistent family plan is what creates that rich language environment your child needs to really thrive. Now, two of the most common approaches you'll hear about are one parent, one language, or OPAL, where, say, mom only speaks French and dad only speaks English. And another really popular one is minority language at home, where the whole family agrees that as soon as you walk in the front door, you're in a Spanish-speaking space. But here's a really fascinating finding from a researcher named Annick Dehauer. She did a huge study and found that while lots of strategies can work, there was one pattern that was particularly successful: when both parents speak the minority language to the child. It just creates this amazing, immersive language bubble that gives that minority language a really strong foundation to grow from. But whatever strategy you choose, these 7 C's from Francois Grosjean are the perfect guiding principles to keep in mind. Focus on communication above all else. Have confidence in the process. You need commitment and consistency with your plan. Get creative. Play games, sing songs, make it fun. Connect it all to the culture behind the language. And most importantly, celebration. Celebrate every single step of this amazing journey. And that brings us right back to where we started. When you trust the process, when you create a loving and supportive environment, you are giving your child one of the most incredible gifts imaginable. So I'll leave you with this thought. What is one small thing you can celebrate about your family's language adventure today? Because in the end, that's exactly what this is: a joyful journey into languages and cultures